Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we are back first and foremost after taking a couple of show bye week of our own, and we're back today to discuss the Dallas Cowboys. Very important matchup for your 500 3-3 Minnesota Vikings, with Dallas coming to town on Sunday Night Football. So this is an opportunity here for in a number of different ways. Of course, playing under primetime lights, it's an opportunity just to play well in front of a national crowd. But more importantly for us, this is an opportunity to get over the 500 mark after starting a season where, I think a couple weeks in, even Drew and I were starting to push the idea of maybe this is a lost season. So you can really turn things around here if you can get things straight against Dallas. You're playing at home at US Bank Stadium. There's a lot of things in the Vikings' favor for this one. That being said, you are facing the number one offense in the NFL right now, so we will break this thing down, see if we can find a couple holes here, and see where we end up, and then we'll do our picks like we typically do for our Thursday show. So that's the game plan for today. Let's hop right into it here, starting with Dak Prescott. Now, before we even say anything about him, as it stands as this recording Wednesday night, he is limited in practice. I believe he's listed as questionable right now. It is our show's belief, and I believe just about everyone in Minnesota's belief, that Dak Prescott's going to play on Sunday. So we're going to operate under the notion that he's going to be the quarterback. And he's a fine quarterback at that. Drew and I have had discussions about the MVP of the league through 7 weeks of play. I don't think that Dak Prescott's too far short on that list. If you think of there's of course the popular names, the Kyler Murray, the sexy 7-0 start. You've got Josh Allen, who of course was a favorite for the award last year, but you've got Dak here, who's coming off of, and by the way, he's going to win, comeback player of the year for sure. Like that's already locked in. He could push a little bit further here with all the weapons that he has around him in Dallas.
Right. And just like we said, Dallas offense is humming. They're the number one offense in the league right now. And they got everybody healthy. They can do some damage. And, there's an abundance of riches for, Kellen Moore to work with here. You have Dak Prescott. You have, top 5 overall pick Ezekiel Elliott at running back. You have first round receiver CeeDee Lamb. You have Amari Cooper. You have, I believe Michael Gallup is coming back soon. I think. I don't know if it's this week, but and then you have what I like, and I think I'll get to later, but Tony Pollard has been mixed in there quite a bit too at running back. So, and of course, great offensive line has been healthy. So this Dallas offense, it's a big test for this Vikings team that, the last few weeks they've been good, but they haven't been tested by, juggernaut offenses. So this is kind of a big test here coming off the bye to see if this team kind of is ready to compete with the big boys.
Absolutely. So Dak Prescott basically has the perfect situation, right? Of course, he's, a mid-round selection. I don't think, there was definitely some analysts out there that had big things in store for Dak Prescott, but I would say the vast majority did not expect it to turn out like this. And part of the reason why he has been so effective, it goes beyond the leadership and the talent and, the overall feel for the game. He's also just got literally a perfect pocket to throw from. Like he's got the running back, as you noted, in Ezekiel Elliott, who, I understand that he's a bit of a polarizing figure because of his contract, but he's still top 5 in the league in rushing. So he's at the very least an above average NFL running back. Then you mentioned Tony Pollard as well, who people were discussing earlier this year, if he might be the better of the two, actually. So they basically have a 1A and a 1B in terms of talented running backs lining up behind him. Directly in front of Dak Prescott to block for him is one of the strongest offensive lines in recent memory, period. Just in terms of the last 10 years or so. I mean, Tyrone Smith has been one of the best left tackles that I've ever seen play in the NFL, period. You've also still got Zach Martin there. Tyler Biadasz at center is very solid. Connor Williams and Terrence Steele rounded out. And then, of course, La'el Collins, who was suspended this season, for, I believe, some sort of lying and complications with a drug test. So he is working in there as well this week, and it kind of remains to be seen. A lot of people are saying throw him in there, make him the starter. I think this is kind of a coaching moment too for Mike McCarthy, kind of easing him back in. Do you still deserve this role? So that being said, whether he starts or not, also a very good offensive lineman. So 3 out of the 5 absolute studs in front of Dak. And then, the playmakers surrounding him, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. They're high pedigree players, both of them first rounders, of course. and they've also been serviceable, if not brilliant, at the NFL level in terms of catching the football, scoring touchdowns, gaining yards, first
Right.
downs, etc. He's got all the pieces in place to be one of the most dynamic offenses in the NFL, and to date, it is, in fact, number one.
Yeah. So, and they're in terms of total yardage, right? But even looking further than that, their offensive line and pass protection has the number 4 PFF grade as a whole.
Yep.
And their offensive line and run blocking is the number 1 grade as a whole, PFF wise. And then of course I like to look more at yards per play offensively. I know that's not even perfect in itself because game flow can dictate things, but they're number 3 in yards per attempt passing and number 3 in yards per play or yards per carry running the ball. So there's that. I mean, all the way around the board, you name it, the Dallas Cowboys offense can get it done. So that's what I mean, by this team, by the Vikings defense finally getting tested here. They've played the Panthers, they've played the Lions, they've played the Cleveland Browns, who good offense, but certainly not the high powered, throw the ball over the yard capability that Dak Prescott has. And so I worry about this team. And I even look back to 2019 when this defense played at Dallas. They did get the win, but Dak Prescott had his way with the Vikings that day. I think 400 yards. He had any throw he wanted to. Mike Hughes was picked on all day long. And so obviously Mike Hughes is no longer in Minnesota, but I feel like the Cowboys could kind of pick up where they left off there. And I'm afraid of that happening.
It's certainly not an ideal week for Patrick Peterson to be out as well, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, coming into the bye, he injured that hamstring and he's currently on IR. Hopeful to return in the near future, but unfortunately you won't have him for this game. So it's going to be Cam Dantzler out there and it's going to be Bashaud Breeland. Now, I know that Dantzler's had his moments this year, but he's also kind of been a part-time player. That's concerning in and of itself. Bashaud Breeland, we went through on the last show that we did, that he's been great over the last 3 weeks, but I think a lot of us aren't blind to the first 3 weeks that he played in Minnesota. And, it's concerning, right? When you've got your top 2 corners out there who you've not only seen be beaten in recent.
Yeah. There's red flags. I mean, and that's
the NFL to a degree.
Here's the thing. The cornerback position is much better now than it was last year at this time, 100%.
That's true.
But against CeeDee Lamb and against Amari Cooper, that's a tall task for this duo of corners to go up against after, again, the last few weeks. You haven't had much of a battle, really. So that's my concern. How do you take care of Amari Cooper in the slot? I don't like leaving one-on-one with him because he and Dak have built up that rapport to, throw that back shoulder type of play and connect on it if they need to. CeeDee Lamb kind of in the slot there a little bit. How do you manage that and keep eyes on him? So it's going to be a stressful game for all of your cornerbacks, and then especially with CeeDee Lamb when he's going over the middle of the field for your linebackers and your safeties. Keep tabs on him. He's kind of running those over routes, running those crossers over the middle of the field. And then you have Amari on the outside. If you're not bracketing him on one side of the field, CeeDee Lamb is probably covered, but then you got one-on-one with Amari Cooper. Vice versa, if you don't really bracket, or if you do bracket Amari, you probably have one guy assigned to CeeDee over the middle. And that's a problem.
Absolutely. And, the way that the Cowboys are built is kind of the dream for the Vikings, right? Like you try to have an efficient ground game that's going to churn up yards and specifically, late in the game, be able to get those end of game first downs, that type of thing. You want that first and foremost. And really that's what Dallas did. They did their absolute best to get a great ground game, and they paid the guy to be, the face of the franchise essentially. And Ezekiel Elliott's been fine. I mean, I think this year has been his first above average year over the last 3 probably. This is the first time that he's really seems healthy and playing to the best of his ability as we've seen him do in the past. But the problem becomes is that you don't just have to stop Ezekiel Elliott. Like, this isn't a team where you can load up 8 or 9 in the box and get away with it, because you're gonna have matchup problems across the board, in coverage then. So which piece do you take away? Like, if you're using the Bill Belichick method, right, of trying to take away your quote best player, there isn't a definitive answer here. Like, it's pick your poison. Truly, it's okay. Yeah. Well, let's take CD out of the game. Let's dominate that X receiver. He's generally going to line up on the outside. Let's take away that entire, let's call it the left side of the field. Then you've got Ezekiel Elliott, coming up in probably a 7-man front most of the time, 4 guys, 3 linebackers and a 4-3 base. And then you've got Amari Cooper one-on-one on the outside with, who is it probably? I mean, probably Bashad Breeland, realistically. Or if he's in the slot, then it's Mackenzie Alexander, one-on-one. I don't like any of those matchups.
Mm-hmm.
It's very concerning, but the thing is that I don't necessarily think the Vikings win this game with great defense. This game to me is more of a situational defense thing. Like, if they want to throw for 400 yards, okay, but hold them to 3. Stop them at the 10.
A little bit of how they won against Dallas last time.
That's the only way you're going to win this game. You're not going to, because you basically you're not going to stop this offense. You can hope to slow it down, but slowing it down might still be 24 points. Ultimately, I mean, we're going to get to this here when we talk about the Cowboys defense, but I mean, to me, this game is, can the defense keep you away from 35? If the defense holds the Dallas Cowboys to between 21 and 30 points, somewhere in that margin, you're just going to have to accept the fact that this is one of those games where you paid Kirk Cousins all this money. You need him to show up a little bit more than usual. This is one of those games. You're playing at home, so you've got that benefit. You're going to have the crowd noise behind you in that regard. You're going to be mostly healthy. Sounds like Dalvin Cook is at max, but whatever max health is for Dalvin Cook. You're going to have your 3 wide receivers and Osborne after his breakout game. Thielen's healthy. Jefferson's healthy. You've got all the pieces to the puzzle. You just need to block efficiently, which I have questions, of course. We always do. But this unit has been better than usual. And then you need to keep pace. This is not I know the quarterback position is not head-to-head Dak versus Kirk. But on the scoreboard this weekend, it comes down to how many points can Dak put up, how many can Kirk put up, because neither one of these defense is going to be able to completely hold the opposing offense, I don't think. So it comes down to who can score more points. And I think Dak's going to score a lot of them. I really do. But that doesn't necessarily make me think that Kirk can't do the same.
That's what I'm afraid of, but also I am weirdly optimistic about, because I do think this team is equipped to keep up in a shootout, provided that they need to be aggressive, right? We've talked about that how many times, that it's when the Vikings, basically it's when they're not aggressive. It's when they're not effective throughout the whole season. You go through the weeks, second half of games, they're trying to wind out the clock, whatever it might be, and they get conservative. They're trying to play the time possession game that Mike Zimmer loves to play. And that's when they start becoming ineffective. If it becomes a shootout type deal and the game flow is pass the ball down the field a ton, I do think Kirk could keep up in that game. And then, like you said, it comes down to the defense coming up with the right stops at the right time, which actually happened in that previous Dallas game 2 years ago. They actually went 9 for 15 on third down, but the key third down stops happened late, and the Vikings just had enough of an edge. And then they got a key turnover in there too, an interception by Dak, and that was enough. So I'm with you. I don't see the Vikings stopping Dallas or even containing them. But it's going to be, if the Vikings are to win this game, it's going to have to be a big prime time, franchise quarterback type performance by Kirk to carry his team over that, probably 35 point mark almost. It's going to have to be one of those games. And I think he can do it. It's one of those, it's going to be Dak versus Kirk in a shootout. I can't get on board with Kirk winning that game at this point. But I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch. So I think it will be a very fun game to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, this is as exciting of a ball game as you can find, right? This is fun for a national audience too.
Yeah.
This isn't one of those games where it's just all right, we're watching because we're.
Well, and the Vikings have objectively been in, I think, 5 of their 6 games this year have been very fun.
Oh, we're a fun team to watch. We're the new Chargers. Apparently.
It's always fun in the last 2 minutes, which is great for I'm sure NBC's loving that for Sunday night. So I guess in terms of defending this team,
who's the weakest link? If you had to pick one, which one are you?
I'm gonna make them run the ball. I mean, I say that in a weird they have the number 1 offensive line in the NFL on the ground. So I say that knowing that I just would rather Zeke run all over the Vikings and keep the scoring down a little bit, and then maybe get the right third down stop here or there. Otherwise, if Dak gets in a rhythm early and starts throwing all over the place, I don't see him stopping. So I would rather, shut down the pass if you can. But of course, that's easier said than done. So, and then ultimately, third downs, I think you're going to be huge. Dak's going to get his. Amari's going to get his. CD's going to get his. Even Zeke's going to get his. But if you can get those right stops, force field goals instead of touchdowns, that's going to be huge, I think. And that might come down to one big pass rush from Everson Griffin or Daniil Hunter, beating that great offensive line for Dallas when it matters. So you got to get those big splash plays. Otherwise, I think Dallas could just run over this team.
Absolutely. You look at the position that this team puts the Vikings in defensively, especially without Patrick Peterson, is that they know they can get what they want too, right? Like they believe that they're going to win this battle in the trenches. And I think that it's fair to say that they probably have the better offensive line. We'll get to their defensive line, but I think generally speaking, like they expect to win their one-on-one matchups basically across the board. So this is going to come down to two things: situational football, like we've talked about, and Mike Zimmer being the better schemist, if you will, calling the bluffs of Kellen Moore.
The third down, disguising and things like
absolutely.
that. The chess match between he and Kellen Moore will be very important and fun to watch too, because we want to talk about Zimmer maybe losing his fastball, things like that, with how the defense performed last year, but the Vikings were still a top 5 defense last year on third down, which is all things considered pretty remarkable. And it still shows Zimmer can dial up a third down blitz or a third down disguise with the best of them still. So he's got to bring his A game there, because, Dak's really good at diagnosing some of that stuff pre-snap, making the right audible. He kind of has the freedom to do some of those things, and it's usually the right call. So there's a lot riding on Zimmer here too, in that perspective. So huge game. It has a lot of implications, and it's going to have to be a big time performance from the Vikings.
Absolutely. So last thing I would say is that I would try to make Dak move around as well. Try to make sure that he's uncomfortable, test that injury.
Especially with the injury. Yeah. I mean, obviously not advocating for an injury, but we're advocating for
testing
the Vikings to,
make sure he's healthy. You take advantage. I mean, here's the thing, like injuries happen in the NFL. We all know it. It's like no one wants anyone to get injured, but like if someone is hurting, take advantage of that. Like if, that's been football since the beginning of time. If someone's ankle's hurting, I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying I approve of it, but people go the extra mile to step on that ankle or roll that ankle a little bit further when you're tackling them. I'm not saying it's right again, but that's football. And so this is a situation where it's like, if Dak Prescott's going to try to move outside the pocket, make sure he pays for it, right? Like if he's not quite at his best moving the football around mobility wise, take advantage of that. Make him try to escape the pocket. Force him to run on that leg. Do everything you can to maximize the situation.
If he is a little gimpy, then I mean,
it's a different ballgame.
If you're Zimmer, you dial up as many blitzes and passing downs as you can, right? Just hope your guys can, be effective in press coverage right away. Hold, stay with their guys for the first couple of seconds, and then Dak's got to move around a little bit. So I don't know the severity of the injury. I'm not sure on that, but that's another point I didn't think of.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to blitz or if you're going to send extra pressure, you got to get home against this guy too. That's ultimately what it's going to come down to. Is I really think this is a situational football game. If you can keep this offense from scoring 7 every time, make sure that when Mike McCarthy makes a ridiculous decision, when he decides to punt from his own territory, 4th and 7 from, the Vikings 43 or 45 or something ridiculous like that. You got to take advantage of that opportunity. I mean, that's a time when really he shouldn't have been punting, and he's going to make some of those calls. I'm sure Mike Zimmer will too, as we all know.
Which Mike can mismanage this game more,
That's the question, man. And I mean, these things will matter. I really think it comes down to just a couple things one way or the other in this game. So let's flip over to the defensive side for the Cowboys and kind of how the Vikings offensively will attack them here. Now, this defense has been solid, but they're interesting, right? They kind of remind me, and I feel like I always go back to like one or like whenever I'm like thinking of a defense, I'm always reminded of like one or like 2 or 3 different defenses from my past, right? And it kind of reminds me of the opportunistic Saints defense that won the Super Bowl, where you've got a Trayvon Diggs who, I mean, by all accounts is stupendous in terms of tracking the football, getting more yardage after intercepting it. I mean, he's got more interceptions than games played to date, right? So he's fantastic at doing that. But at the same time, like this is kind of a bend but don't break defense. Trayvon Diggs, for every time he's intercepted a pass this year, and you literally saw the perfect microcosm of it the last time he was out on the field.
The Patriots game.
Yeah, he can get
one
burned.
play pick six, the next play he gives up a 70-yard touchdown to give the Patriots the lead right back. So, and I touching on that, the Cowboys defense is number 2 in the league in turnovers with 14.
Right.
Meanwhile, they are 28th in net yards per attempt allowed Right. And they are 18th in yards per carry allowed. So they're not a fantastic defense on a per play basis. They just make the big splash plays that matter. And that's helped them win quite a bit this year. So from that sense, again, offensively, I hesitate to say be aggressive, because that's where mistakes are kind of made sometimes. But on the other flip side of that is that if you are aggressive against this defense, while they're looking for that big splash play, you might be able to, get the splash play yourself, right? Like the Kendrick Bourne touchdown at the end of that Patriots game that maybe you don't get if you're conservative, So I kind of, and I'm always going to err on the side of aggressiveness. I don't think you beat a team like Dallas by playing the time possession game because they're just going to run up the score on you. So I think you let Kirk loose here. And your best bet probably to win this game is to have Kirk win that shootout against Dak. I think you have to let him try at least. You got the home crowd with you. You got that noise to potentially influence things and maybe create the right play at the end of the game, or maybe they have a turnover on their side of the ball, whatever. But I can't see a scenario where playing that time of possession game, when you have a defense that's trying to create turnover instead of trying to just stop you, kind of like that's their thing is creating turnovers. And I'm sure, if they get one, they might, but you have to be able to also be aggressive about it and try to take advantage of them trying to be opportunistic when they're going to be gambling and then leaving those windows for big plays.
First and foremost, I think it's important to note here that Kirk Cousins has been about as good as he's ever been, at least in Minnesota, at protecting the football this season, right? He's got 3 fumbles total, 2 interceptions. So relative to what we've seen in the past where he's had a little bit of fumbleitis and he's been a little bit erratic with, throwing the football, this is a pretty good addition of Kirk Cousins in terms of just field management. There's nothing wrong with being a game manager in that sense, right? Like you have to take your shots, sure, but also don't take the stupid shots, right? Like don't take the shot 2-on-1 to Adam Thielen down the sideline, because that effectively means that either Osborne or Jefferson probably has one-on-one coverage somewhere else. So what I'm saying is, I'm with Drew. Be aggressive for sure. I think all of us will agree, right, that you need to be aggressive in this football game. You need to be eyeing probably 31 points at the minimum here. So you need to be thinking points on every drive. I'm thinking go for it on 4th and 3, basically from the Vikings 40 on when you're on offense. That's kind of the situation I think this calls for the Vikings this game. But at the same time, don't do something stupid. Like don't do what Mike McCarthy did 2 weeks ago, going for it on 4th and 12 from his own 27. Like be aggressive, but don't be stupid. Like think through the situation that you have when you're in Dallas's territory, right? You're on Dallas's 15. You got 4th and 2. That's a situation you got to try to get 7 there. Have to. This is the type of game where you need to get 7 in that situation. And if you fail, live with it. You're a defensive-minded head coach. You've got this team backed up to the 15. In theory, you're going to be getting the ball back in 3 downs if you do everything right. So you can't be afraid, but you also can't be stupid, right?
It's just you can't you play to win. And it sounds so dumb to make that point because everybody's playing that way, but the Vikings play more not to lose than they do to win. And then we've went over this hundreds of times, so many times now, going back to basically the whole Cousins era. It seems like this is a game that if they don't pull out all the stops to win this game, we saw Detroit doing it with fake punts and onside kicks and stuff. Like, I'm not saying you got to do all these trick plays, but clearly they are trying to win that game. They are trying to grab the game by the horns, right? The Vikings do not have that approach or have not shown that approach yet this season. And it's nearly cost them 2 times back-to-back weeks. And they better have a kind of a more aggressive approach in this game, or I will start losing faith in them. Even if they do end up winning the game by some miracle, it's just I want to see them go in there, grab a game by the horns. And even the Seattle game, when they won that one, they were bleeding that one away. And, where there were one pass interference call on Harrison Smith there that probably should have been called away from having another nail biter there too. So they need to be more aggressive throughout the game flow, and really trying to grab the game by the horns and win the game, not just survive and play better than the other team, because sometimes that doesn't work and the better team doesn't always win the game.
Absolutely. And then you look at the situation that the Vikings have too with this defense, and Like, yes, there are some very strong playmakers here, but it's more individuals than across the board, just in terms of like this is a team that wins with the individual play of Trayvon Diggs, Micah Parsons, and Randy Gregory, as far as I'm concerned. Those three guys, they've been devastating this year in terms of, rushing the passer, creating turnovers, forcing the football into the hands of their own offense. So first and foremost, don't do that, right? Like, it can be very simple. Obviously, excuse me, I'm going to have to cough.
Not away.
Sorry, that's my bad. This is a very professional show. So you've got three guys that you basically have to keep the ball away from, right? It's going to be impossible to keep it away from Randy Gregory forever because he's pass rushing. But Trayvon Diggs, I'm not saying don't gamble ever, but I am saying don't take the stupid gamble.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a way to manage this game. Again, Dallas is a very opportunistic defense. These guys are trained to, they're going to go out for the football. They're going to try to jump routes, things like that. So I hope Clint Kubiak, I hope Kirk Cousins, I hope that coaching staff is putting together a game plan to take advantage of that. Where, I mean, these guys are still young. Trayvon Diggs is still a young player. Micah Parsons is still a rookie. So these guys are still trying to get acclimated into the league. We've seen that with like Marcus Peters, where for as many big splash plays as he's made and the money that's made him, he's been torched, for every time of that. So I would love to see the Vikings almost, I don't want to say attack Trayvon Diggs or go after him. I'm not saying he's a weak link, but I would be kind of nice to maybe go after him with a couple of, underneath routes, things like that, and then kind of go for that double move on him, because I do think someone like Jefferson could torch him on that and then get him back on his heels for a lot of the game. So I don't know. That's kind of me thinking out loud on some ideas. If I was a coach, clearly I'm not, but just an idea that because I'm one of those that's like interception numbers probably not the best indication on a player, because that means he's being thrown at.
It's the flashy number.
Teams he's being thrown at, which means the opposing team thinks that they can beat him.
And they have. So that's something to keep in mind. I mean, always know where Micah Parsons is. Keep in mind that Randy Gregory's going to be coming off the edge and has been one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Also a great story, by the way. I mean, this is the dude that's been suspended multiple times for just, I believe, marijuana for the most part. So it's nice to see, a guy that I don't want to say he's a perfect person by any means, but a guy that has screwed up in the past, now making the most out of it. That's just, that's a great opportunity. And then lastly here on this defense, Jaron Kearse has been good this year for the Dallas Cowboys defense. So he's back. Last time we saw him, he wasn't particularly happy with Mike Zimmer. So I'm sure that this is kind of a revenge game for him. And you have to imagine that Trayvon Diggs has probably got it somewhere in the back of his head that he wants to beat the Vikings because of how things ended up with Stephon too. So there might be some bad blood here. And I kind of hope there will be, because I don't like the Cowboys and I don't want them to like us. So this could be a fun matchup. And I think it gets more entertaining when you have that escalated emotion.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing I'll add to, Mike Zimmer has been relatively good, I think, against Mike McCarthy. Last year, notwithstanding, I mean, the game at US Bank Stadium, Vikings defense depleted. He also had Andy Dalton at cornerback. But when Mike McCarthy was back in Green Bay, it seemed like Zimmer always had a way to kind of contain that Packers offense for the most part. And so, I mean, I'm going back to 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. It seemed like that Packers offense was always kind of contained. So I do have a little bit of confidence in that aspect of things. But at the end of the day, just be aggressive. Pull out all the stops. This is a game for Minnesota Vikings. You're at home, national TV audience. You're trying to make a name for yourself. You're trying to earn some respect around the league as a contender in the NFC. This is one that you got to win.
I mean, ultimately the question is just why not? Like, why not go for it here? This is a great opportunity. And let's just be real.
So here's the thing, and another kind of to piggyback off of that, even the way the NFC is shaping up right now, like the Vikings, it's possible, actually very possible, the way things are shaking out. It's a very top heavy conference. You got basically 4 or 5 teams that are going to probably run the conference between Dallas, Tampa, Green Bay, Arizona. After that, there's not really a 6 or 7 seed that's kind of jumping up there to fill that spot. Chicago looks terrible, right? So I think the Vikings can, I mean, for as bad as for as not on this team as I am, like I'm not super confident in this team right now still, just by the way they've not handled the end of the game the last couple of weeks, but I still feel very confident they will make the playoffs because that 7 seed, that 6 seed doesn't seem like as of now there'll be a lot of competition for it. So with that said, why not be aggressive and try to get, obviously they're going to try to win the game, but you should be thinking of this as a must win. Try to get that
definitely
that big name for yourself, get that recognition, get that respect as a competitor, as a contender in this conference. You need that big win on your resume. And I think this could be that one. So this is, again, big time game here.
This definitely holds a lot of weight just in terms of winning an NFC matchup against a playoff caliber opponent, right? Like it's not just the respect issue here. It's also on paper. This is an important one, right? It's an NFC win. It's a win against a team that's probably going to be above you in the conference, strength of victory, strength of schedule, all those different things. This is an important one here for the Vikes. And it's a key opportunity here. So ultimately the question becomes, what do you think is going to happen here? I mean, I think that we've made it clear that Dallas should be and is, by the way, the favorite as far as Vegas is concerned. But do you think that, does any part of you believe the Vikings can actually get this thing done?
Yeah. I'm not going to say it's not happening. I'm more confident in this game for the Vikings than I have been in other games this season. But I am going to pick Dallas to win this game. And it's just, I think that offense is too good. I know the Vikings offense can really get on fire. I just don't see them maintaining that aggressive philosophy that I'm talking about, where they really let Kirk rip it. And at the end of the day, I just think I don't have enough confidence in the Vikings to slow down this Cowboys offense. There's too much firepower over there. So I think Dallas wins this game, much to the chagrin of myself and other Vikings fans.
So I kind of gone back and forth all week on this one. I think it's very obvious why Dallas would win this game, why they should be the favorite. But we kept talking about that 7 seed. The Vikings are the 7 seed right now. This is not a bad football team. It's just a frustratingly average team that can't get out of its own way sometimes. I'm going to bet against my own my better judgment here that the Vikings get this thing done. And that essentially is to say that I think the Vikings are going to fluke into one here, because I don't think that in terms of all around roster play that Dallas is the weaker team here, but the Vikings are playing at home. Both teams are coming off of a bye, so there's a wash there, right? There's no advantage one way or the other, but you do have the opportunity for Kirk Cousins to really get a feel for this game for 2 weeks. And I'm going to put my stock in saying, and again, I might be pissed come Monday when we're recording this next show saying, I tried to believe in this guy and he didn't come through. That may happen, but this is the game for me where I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to put my stock in Kirk Cousins. And this is the put your money where your mouth is thing. The dude's getting paid $30 million. This is the game that you're made for. You're playing at home, primetime football, superior opponent. You're not supposed to win. Why not give it everything you got, pull out all the stops?
This is the game that everything about both Mike Zimmer's tenure with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins' tenure with the Vikings, everything tells us they shouldn't win this game just based on how they performed on whether it's national TV, whether it's against a better opponent than them, whatever it is. This is the game that they do not win. And so it would be huge, I think, for them internally too, the confidence to be like, yep, okay, we can do this and we can be a contender. And it would certainly shift my opinion of this team moving forward if they were able to get it done. But I just don't see it yet.
So I'll take Vikes. Drew is on with the Cowboys. That is our first pick of the week, and it is money line week because it's the end of October. So Drew and I will be specifying one individual matchup that's worth, quote, 5 points as opposed to the regular 1, as with every other individual matchup across the board here. So we'll split on the first one. That's the first time, I believe, that we haven't been on the same page for the Vikings game this season. That brings us to Thursday's game, which is on paper sounds awesome, right? In Arizona and Green Bay heading down to Arizona, an opportunity for the Vikings to gain some ground, right? Just adding more, potential fodder to why the Vikings should beat the Dallas Cowboys. Green Bay is going to be without Devontae Adams for sure. Going to be without Alan Lazard for sure. Sounds like J.J. Watt is out for for the Cardinals for sure. So you're not going to get all the star power that you kind of expected, but this still should be a pretty fun one.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of go on a limb here. I'm going to go Green Bay. And you know what? Screw it. I'll make it my money line pick too. For as you know, I'm just not buying Arizona yet. I'm not, and I don't know if that's a hot take or not. You know, they've had some pretty darn good wins on their slate. You know, they obviously dominated the Rams at their place, beat the Browns pretty handily. But I just don't see it yet, and I feel like this is one of those games where Rodgers kind of just turns it on, despite the fact that he's going to be without Devontae Adams. You know, he's 6-0 in his career without Devontae in the starting lineup due to injuries or whatever the other concerns. So on a short week, I kind of always want to give the edge to the more experienced team. Rodgers is going to have that edge there, how to deal with that Thursday short week. I'm going to go Packers here. Might be dumb. I'm going to go with it though.
I mean, you make a compelling case, and I think it's fair to say that if, you know, Green Bay was fully loaded here, that this is probably a matchup I might lean.
It'd be a really fun game. And I think this will be fun anyway.
Right.
My fantasy team, obviously, going to be hurting without Devontae, but.
Mine as well. And I also have Aaron Rodgers too. So I'm kind of hoping for, you know, that game, right? The thing is with Aaron Rodgers, I'm picking Arizona, but the thing is with Aaron Rodgers is that he doesn't crumble when the guys around him aren't on the field. He's still got Randall Cobb, and that's probably enough for him to, you know, throw the ball for 300 yards.
I do remember last year, it was at New Orleans, I believe, was when the Packers were without Devontae Adams, and the Saints at the time were, you know, flying high, and kind of nobody expected the Packers to. I mean, there was people thinking they could win, but it was one of those where they weren't favored, and Packers went in there, just blew them out. So it's one of those where I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's just, I think Rodgers is well equipped to handle this. And I don't think they're going to be hurting as much as people think by, you know, the injuries and the players being out.
All right. So we are 2 for 2 on splits. I'm on Arizona. You are on Green Bay with your money line pick of the month. Carolina Atlanta is the next one up here, an NFC South matchup. Sam Darnold faces off with Matt Ryan and Kyle Pitts, and the very exciting, all of a sudden, offense that is the Atlanta Falcons. Who you got in this one?
I got the Falcons. The Panthers look poopy lately. Sam Darnold got benched, and you know the Falcons' offense the last 3 weeks has actually been pretty darn solid.
It's been fun.
Matt Ryan's been slinging it well. Kyle Pitts has waken up. And he looks like he's not even really a tight end. He's just a really tall, athletic, lanky receiver who is, you know, a freak now. So they're finally figuring out what he is. And I mean, yeah, Falcons I think they're going to crush him. I'm taking them in the spread too.
I'm taking Atlanta on this one too. I can't confidently pick Carolina in anything. Like, they are the classic 3-0 team that just completely fell apart, right? Without Christian McCaffrey, they can't get anything done. I kind of want to see PJ Walker, honestly. Like, I don't see why wouldn't you give him a shot?
Hot seat too is Joe Brady here, because I mean, how many people have been talking about him as this genius play caller?
Yeah, it doesn't look that way right
now. It's been rough the last few weeks.
Absolutely. So Atlanta for both of us. Next one here, we move to the AFC North. That is Miami and Buffalo. I don't think we really need to discuss this one a whole lot.
No, Bills.
AFC
Dolphins are bad. Dolphins are bad.
Yeah, Dolphins are bad. I'm going Buffalo. They're still trying to trade for Deshaun Watson, which I don't even know. That's a whole different discussion, but they clearly have no confidence into us. So right. Buffalo for both of us. San Francisco and Chicago is the next one here. Another battle of pretty bad football teams. I mean, based off recent memory, this is not.
I don't know how much longer Matt Nagy has. I mean, if he loses this game at home to a 2-4 team,
I think he's good.
I would imagine that's going to be near the end. And I'm taking the Niners because whatever happened in Tampa was disgusting. So I'm taking the Niners here. And I hope, for the sake of the Vikings, I hope Matt Nagy's job is very secure, but I feel like he's on his way out.
Yeah, I'm taking San Francisco too. There's no way in hell I'd pick the Bears right now. Justin Fields looks like he's completely disinterested. Not because he's not happy to be playing football, but because his offense is being called completely ineffectively for his skill set.
The fact that there is a very large contingent of Bears fans that seem to believe Nagy's like sabotaging Fields because of how bad the offense is set up for him. Like that should speak volumes. And not that I think Nagy's actually doing that, but it's just there's no way it should be going this poorly with the talent Fields has. And there are some weapons. Allen Robinson is getting like 4 targets a game.
Why? Yeah,
so
that was what I was going to say. Like, how the hell have
like,
you allowed this guy
just,
to not be a factor at all? This is
I
gross
have no idea.
practice.
I have no idea.
All right, so both of us are rolling San Francisco. That brings us to Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Pittsburgh kind of not looking great. Cleveland, also not looking great. We don't even know if Baker Mayfield's going to play this game. I'm going to guess no. So it's probably going to be Case Keenum against old hobbled Ben Roethlisberger this week. Who are you taking in that one?
Case Keenum or Baker. I'm taking the Browns. I like the Browns. I think they match up well with Pittsburgh in the sense that like Pittsburgh kind of can get you with the pass rush. But if they just run the ball down their throats, I think that's kind of the way. It's weird because I'm always kind of, hey, pass the ball. But this Browns rushing attack is something else. When Dearness Johnson can go in there against a really good Denver defense and, rush for 22 carries, 146 yards, like it's nothing. So I'll take the Browns.
That's the power of winning in the trenches right there. And honestly, I mean, I flipped my pick last week when I saw that Mayfield was out, and now I don't really think it matters. I think Case Keenum can probably run that offense, not as effectively, but
darn close.
Proficiency, or like a winning proficiency, certainly. So I'll take Cleveland as well. I also think the Steelers are straight up bad. I think they might be the worst in the AFC North. So I'm taking Cleveland there. Next one here is Philly and Detroit. This is a fun one for me because it is my money line pick officially. If you remember, if you were listening at that time, I also took Detroit about a month ago at this time and said the same thing was going to happen, that they get a win over an opponent that was favored by Vegas over them. That did not happen. Detroit still 0-7. But if you're gonna win a game, to me, this is as winnable of a football game as you are going to find on your, NFC North schedule for the Detroit Lions.
I'm taking the Lions too, but I'm not as confident as I am in the Packers. I'm not going to do that with a team that's winless, but I do think like Philly's not that good, man. They're just not. So you're right. If Detroit's going to win a game, this is the one.
I think I read that 81% of the offense for Philadelphia runs through Jalen Hurts, who is an average quarterback, I would say. I mean, that's your number one problem. Now you got Miles Sanders hurt, by the way. He barely used him all season long, and now he's hurt. Nothing seems to be quite going right for Philadelphia. And I think that Detroit, for all their flaws, they certainly play hard. And like you said earlier on the show, they certainly play to win too. So for me, this is the opportunity. I'm doubling down on the Detroit Lions. Hopefully they get it right for me this week. They are my money line pick. So we'll both roll with Detroit. A little bit more important for me on that one. All right, the next one here, we head to the AFC South. That is Tennessee and Indianapolis. Tennessee, as we noted prior to this, actually slightly underdog in this matchup with the Colts because they are playing in Indianapolis. But it is as close to about an even matchup, from Vegas' standpoint, as you're going to find.
Yeah, the Titans are rolling now. I mean, they just beat Buffalo and the Chiefs back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
I've been a Titans guy. They fluctuate. So, I mean, they're the team that could lose to the New York Jets one week and then a couple weeks later beat Buffalo, who was perceived at the time as the best team in the league. So I'm going to take Tennessee. All the Colts are playing really well right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Indianapolis seems like they're coming back. Carson Wentz is sort of finding that second life here. It seems like they're, playing good football, but I'm with you. It's hard to bet against Tennessee. I mean, the number one thing that people say is as to why Tennessee can't win football games is because they're too reliant on Derrick Henry and they can't keep up with a high-powered passing offense. Well, they just did that 2 weeks in a row against maybe the two best quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, last week Derrick Henry wasn't that effective on the ground.
No, he was not.
He had like 28 carries for 90 yards, like barely 3 yards a carry, and they still dominated. So the fact that that's a well-rounded win, that should be very confidence boosting for them.
Absolutely. I'm going to take Tennessee. A.J. Brown's also seems to be finding it as well. So good time to pick them. Both of us, Tennessee over Indianapolis. It brings us to one we probably don't need to discuss a whole lot, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals against the New York Jets. I think at the beginning of the season, there would have been some question marks.
I believe in the Bengals. I do. I mean, that win over the Ravens has totally convinced me. I think they're a real contender.
And how great is Joe Burrow? I know we talked about this when he was drafted. I know we talked about this before he was drafted. I mean, that's just such a great person to have as your rock for the next 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hopefully he stays healthy with the way that he plays. But my goodness, that guy
I
is so
really
much
hope
fun.
so too.
The way that he talks to his teammates too, like all the clips you see on your Twitter timeline or whatever, he just seems like the perfect guy to be the face of a franchise. It kind of sucks that they ended up in Cincinnati, at least from a marketing standpoint for sure. But man, he's got them heading in the right direction. I bet they stomped the Jets this week. Both of us will roll with Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
Next one here, I don't think we need to talk about this one either. The Rams at Houston. Rams only lost one game. Houston's only won one game. Rams for both of us, which brings us to New England and the Los Angeles Chargers, the other LA team here, who has floundered a bit in recent weeks and has shown maybe some potential weak spots. The defense has some question marks, but you are playing against a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones in New England, who, coming off a 50-point performance against the Jets, they've also had a couple of clunkers of themselves. If the Chargers are going to win, take advantage of the Chiefs in the West, get back into it with the Raiders, this is definitely a game that they need.
Yeah, I got the Chargers here. I still don't quite believe in the Patriots and Mac Jones quite yet. I do believe in the Chargers, though.
Yeah, I believe in the Chargers as well. I mean, we talked about it earlier this year that they've kind of evolved from being that team that plays, allows themselves to lose games by allowing for the opportunity for their opposition to get back into it. They seem to have fixed that, issue. Anytime you're playing Bill Belichick, there's no guarantees, but I think they have the more well-rounded roster. I think they got a better quarterback for sure. And I'll take the Chargers too. Which brings us to Jacksonville and Seattle. I mean, it's just funny because with Russell Wilson in there, I think we pretty confidently pick Seattle. But with Geno Smith in there, I'm pretty confidently leading Jacksonville despite all of the madness that goes down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one where I kind of screw it. Yeah, give me Jacksonville. I mean, Geno just doesn't look. I mean, again, it was one of those games. If you look at the numbers last night, it was totally a Christian Ponder performance. If you take away like one of those bad Ponder performances where it's like 12 for 25 for like 60 yards, that's what it would have been if without that 84-yard touchdown to DK. So I'm going Jags here.
Yeah, the Seattle clearly has no confidence in its quarterback, and why should they? Really? I mean, he's led one touchdown drive thus far, outside of that Metcalf, 84-yard touchdown or whatever it was. One of the best, indicators of whether a quarterback is, has the potential to compete, as an actual passer of the football is the target spread of their primary receivers. And man, it gets cut in half for Metcalf and Lockett when Geno Smith is in there versus when Wilson's in there. So I'm pretty confident here. I'm taking Jacksonville. I did not think those words were going to come out of my mouth this season, but here we are. That brings us to Washington and Denver. Washington has not been the team that I think a lot of us hoped they would be. Denver, again, same thing as Carolina, completely fallen apart since the 3-0 start. They look gross, like disgusting, terrible,
disgusting. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. But so Washington last week was outstandingly bad in the red zone. Moved the ball really well against Green Bay. I'm going to go with Heineke here over Bridgewater, which again, another, by the way, rematch of former Vikings quarterbacks. I'm going to go Heineke just because I think Washington's offense is a little bit more high powered and capable of putting up the points needed than the Broncos.
That's pretty funny to think about, by the way. I had never added Taylor Heineke onto that equation, but
yeah, seriously.
All three quarterbacks on the Vikings roster in 2017 are now starting quarterbacks in the NFL in 2021. Bridgewater, Keenum, and of course Heineke, we're talking about here. I'm going to take Washington as well. I think Denver just sucks. There's no Von Miller there. My goodness, Cleveland just made them look gross. I know it's a Thursday night matchup, but to Ernest Johnson, he looked really good. Don't get me wrong. He looked really good. But how do you allow 150 yards from a guy that no one knew 3 hours before? Denver looks bad. I'm taking Washington despite their woes as well. which brings us to a pretty solid NFC South matchup. This one should be fun. Tampa Bay heads to New Orleans in the Superdome. Tom Brady, of course, facing off against Jameis Winston. Not quite the Drew Brees matchup of the last couple of years, but still should be a pretty fun one. New Orleans boasts a pretty strong defense. It sounds like there will be no Antonio Brown for the foreseeable future, and definitively not in this game. Who do you got in this one?
I got Tampa Bay. I mean, I'm gonna take Tampa Bay right now over most teams. The Saints haven't really done enough to convince me that they're a legit contender, so I'll go with Tampa.
Yeah, I'm going to take Tampa Bay as well. They've kind of replaced Kansas City as the default pick. Like, it doesn't matter who they're playing. They're the better football team. That's just who they look like. I mean, they're hurt right now, too. There's no Antoine Winfield out there. They're down to what? They're like 6th and 7th cornerbacks. They pulled Richard Sherman off the street, and he's not even playing. And yet they're still playing great defensively. They get Levante David back this week, too. I mean, I like this team, and I think they are, they're as close to a favorite as the NFC has right now, outside of the Cardinals to get to that NFC championship game. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay. I think that, they're the better team straight up, and they've got the better quarterback for sure, which is never, something that you want. I'll just say this as I always do. You never bet against Tom Brady. Like, if it's a toss up, just go with Tom Brady. So I'm going Tampa Bay here. Last one here, Monday Night Football. The Giants head to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. And my goodness, I'm taking Kansas City, but if they blow this one, it's over. Like, they're in real trouble if they lose to Daniel Jones. And who do they have out there at wide receiver right now? Is it Slayton? Is that their number one?
Dante Pettis.
They're on wide receivers 4 and 5 with Daniel Jones slinging it. If Kansas City loses at home, my God.
And they might trade Evan Ingram to make Kyle Rudolph tight end 1. So, but yeah, I mean, you're right. And I said it the first 4 weeks of the year. I was like, I'm picking the Chiefs against anybody, no matter what.
Right.
That strategy has very much gone wrong for me. Yeah, I'm with you. One more chance here for the Chiefs. Otherwise, man, it doesn't look good. That defense is quite bad. And then Mahomes is really pressing offensively. Like, it's weird because I keep seeing numbers that the Chiefs offense is generating first downs. Like, they're with this series of downs, they get a first down for the next series more often than any offense in the league. It's just that they're turning it over at such inopportune times,
right?
Whether it's a fumble, whether it's a pick, whatever it is, that they're not like last week. It didn't result in any points, but they turned it over so much. So they're moving the ball fine. It's just getting Mahomes to settle down, not force the issue and take what's there. And I'm sure they'll, run over that stuff this week. And I think it could be one of those big time blowouts.
Yeah, this should be, the comeback game, right? Where
the bounce back game.
Yeah, they get back to 500 and, they kind of start, getting their mojo back a little bit. I mean, it's clear who the better team is, right? Like, Kansas City is Kansas City is still a Super Bowl roster despite their defensive woes. They just got to start playing together better, right? And the turnovers have to stop coming at the wrong time. They got to stop dropping. Like, it's probably 4 passes from Mahomes this year that have been dropped into the hands of an opposing receiver. Like, it's not. I'm not saying that he's not at fault, but they just got to stop. Like,
he's certainly forcing the issue. Like, he's getting to a little bit of. You saw that with kind of Rodgers a couple years ago, where it seemed like he's always trying to kind of extend the play into something more than it's going to pan out to be. And Mahomes certainly has done that in his career to at a very high level where he's made plays out of nothing. But it's just the odds.
It's part of what makes him
it's
great.
Just like now he's kind of made that a little too much of his game, where his offensive linemen are very inexperienced and it goes haywire a little bit too much.
Yep. But we're both rolling with Kansas City, and that rounds out our picks for the week. As it stands today, I'm 73-34. Drew 64-93, 9 games behind. Opportunity here, of course, with that money line pick to get right back into it real quick here.
Go Packers, I guess.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, I have 2 of them on my fantasy team, so I've kind of been not rooting for them to win, but rooting for their 2 best players, which kind of in turn.
It is kind of rooting for them. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Anything we missed? Is there anything that we did not cover? I know we took a couple shots at Mike McCarthy. Did we get enough of those in here for
we didn't. I did want to say this. So we talked about the Mike's mismanaging the game the most. I recently watched back the Vikings Packers game, week 2 of 2018. This is the one where Daniel Carlson missed all those field goals. the Packers intercepted Cousins. It was a pass right off Treadwell's hands. With like 2 minutes left in the game. They were up by 5 at the time. And they needed basically one first down to win the game. Vikings had one timeout left and a 2-minute warning. And so what happened was the Packers ran the ball first. Vikings called a timeout, or maybe it was 2-minute warning after that. I think that's a 2-minute warning. So a second down, Packers went long developing pass play, incomplete throwaway, deep shot to the end zone for Devontae Adams, incomplete. Vikings saved the timeout. Packers kicked that field goal to go 29-21. And the Vikings go on the field with all that time, score a touchdown, overtime. I hope Mike McCarthy makes a similar mistake in his game management this week, where he gives the opposing team, the Vikings, more chances than they really should have at any point. So kudos to Mike McCarthy for that game. I was watching that earlier this week. I saw that. I laughed at him a little bit more, and I always like laughing at him. So
ultimately, this might come down to one bad decision one way or the other. We've talked about it. I mean, it's going to come down to one bad gamble, one bad turnover, one bad decision. Let's hope the Vikings are on the right end of those moments here coming up on Sunday Night Football this weekend. Like we said a million times, this is a big one. And if they get this thing done, next week looks a lot more fun. And on the flip side of that, if you move to 3 and 4, well, I wouldn't say that next episode will be doom and gloom, but it certainly will not be as happy as if this team is able to overcome a lot and get this upset this weekend. So Skol Vikes, wishing them the best this weekend. Hopefully they'll, at the very least, give us an entertaining game to watch.
It'll be fun.
Football. Absolutely. For us, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, wherever else you listen to your podcast, you'll be able to find us in the Daily Norseman as well. Make sure to check out the rest of the Climbing the Pocket team. We got shows 5 days a week, a couple podcasts mixed in there as well. So if you don't like Drew and myself, there might be someone on the team that you do. So make sure to check that out. And then, of course, our home base is Daily Norseman. They put out great content every single day throughout the day. So make sure that you're checking that out. So with all that being said, wishing the Vikes the best this weekend. And whether they win or lose, we'll be back for you next week. So thanks for listening to the show, and we'll catch you guys then.